I read and you do whatever whilst listening to my sweet, soothing Australian voice. Um, Today we will be reading chapters 21 to 25 of Obsidian, where we're getting pretty close to the end here. There are 30 chapters, so let's see how we go. Hello, good evening. I'm going to start. Astonishingly, things were sort of normal now. My trace did fade in a week and a half. Damon had acted like he'd been released from a 20-year jail sentence, and he was never around when I was with Dee anymore. September and most of October passed without anything happening. Mum continued to work both jobs, and she had a couple more dates with Mr. Michaels. She liked him, and I was happy for her. It had been so long since I'd seen her smile not tinged with sorrow. Carissa and Lisa both had been to my house, and many times we'd gone to the movies or the mall in Cumberland with Dee. Even though I'd grown close to the two human girls and had a heck of a lot more common with them, I was closer to Dee. We did everything together, except talk about Damon. She tried, several times. I know he likes you, she said, once we were supposed to be studying. I see the way he looks at you. He gets uptight if I bring you up. I'd sighed and closed my notebook. Dee, I think the reason why he stares at me is because he's planning on ways to kill me and hide my body. That is so not the look he gives you. Then what's the look, Dee? She knocked her book off the bed and climbed onto her knees, placing her hands over her chest. It's the I hate you, but I want you look. I giggled. That was terrible. It's true. She lowered her hands. We can date humans if we want to, you know. It's kind of pointless, but we can. And he's never paid attention to any other human. He's been forced to pay attention to me, Dee. I flopped onto my back, on my bed. My stomach tightened at the thought of Damon secretly wanting to be with me. Granted, I knew he was attracted to me. I felt it. But lust didn't have anything on like. What about you? What's up with Adam? Absolutely nothing at all. I don't know how Ash is attracted to Damon. We grew up with them, and Andrew is like a brother to me. I don't think he feels any differently either. She paused, her lip trembling. I don't like any of my kind. Okay, you pretend to listen. I mean, that's the point, right? Is there a human boy you like? She shook her head. No, but if there was, I shouldn't have to be afraid to like him. I have a right to be happy. It shouldn't matter if it's one of your own kind. Or ours that does it. I completely agree. Dee had lain down next to me, snuggling up. Damon would freak out if I fell for a human. I almost smiled at that, but then I remembered their brother. Damn right, Damon would freak. Maybe rightfully so, because if his brother hadn't fallen for a human, he'd still be alive. I hoped for Dee's sake that she never fell for one. Damon would most definitely go nutso. As it approached mid-October, it seemed like we'd gone backward in time. I was going to find that pen of his and destroy it, but I'd lost count of how many times I was poked in the back long after the trace had faded from me. It seemed he lived to get under my skin. And there was a part of me that kind of looked forward to it, only because it was entertaining, until one of us seriously got mad, especially when he was being downright antisocial. Like Friday in class, Simon had asked if I wanted to study for our trig exam. Sorry, my screen is like distracting me because it keeps like, anyway, keeps like doing this weird glitchy thing. Anyway, sorry. Before I could even respond, Simon's backpack had flown off his desk, scattered its contents across the floor, as if someone had swept his arm across the desk. Red-faced and confused, Simon had been successfully distracted by the laughing class while he gathered up his notebooks and scattered pencils. I'd glanced back over my shoulder at Damon, suspecting he was behind the flying backpack, but all he did was smile lazily at me. What's your deal? I asked in the hallway after class. I know you did it. He shrugged. So? So? I stopped by my locker, surprised to find that Damon had followed me there. That was rude, Damon. You embarrassed him. Then I lowered my voice to a whisper, and I thought using your stuff would draw them here. That was barely a blip on the map. That didn't even leave a trace on anyone. He lowered his head until the edges of his dark curls brushed my cheek. I was between wanting to crawl into my locker and crawl into him. Ooh, crawl into him, huh? Gonna go in there. Let's not go there. Besides, I was doing you a favor. I laughed. And how is that doing me a favor? Damon smiled at me and then lowered his gaze so his thick, dark lashes shielded his eyes. Studying math wasn't what he had in mind. I might just connect myself again to my phone because my internet is not doing well in this Australian rain, unfortunately. So let's see if I can get this working. Okay, and we're back. Sorry for the slight delay. The internet's not very good when it rains. It just has a connection. That seemed debatable, but I decided to play along. I wasn't backing down from him, not even when he could toss me in the air with a single thought. And what if that's the case? You like Simon? His chin jerked up, anger flashing in his emerald eyes. You can't possibly like him. I hesitated. Are you jealous? Damon looked away, and I seized the opportunity to finally have one thing to rub in his face and step forward. He didn't move or breathe. You're jealous of Simon? I lowered my voice. Of a human? For shame, Damon. He sucked in a sharp breath. I'm not jealous. All I'm trying to do is help you out. Guys like Simon want to get between your legs. My cheeks flushed, and I stared at him. Why? You think that's the only reason why a guy might like me? Damon smiled knowingly as he slowly backed up. Just saying. He left after that, disappearing into the crowded hall, which was good because if he'd stayed a moment longer, I would have socked him. When I turned around, I saw Ash standing outside her class. Her look pretty much fried me on the spot. No one was talking about Sarah. It wasn't that the school had forgotten her. It was just that they'd moved on, like most did. Knowing how and why she died was something I tried not to think about. When I did, my stomach soured like curdled milk. She died because Damon saved me, and the Aram had needed someone to take his anger out on. And at night, I dreamed about the parking lot behind the library. I saw his face, the coldness and rage in his eyes as he squeezed the life out of me. Those nights, I woke with a scream stuck in my throat, covered in a cold sweat. Sounds like this gal has PTSD, like, sweetheart, go see a therapist. Not even kidding, maybe some meds. Other than the nightmares and the occasional alien bully, and the occasion, I think that's supposed to say occasional. Anyway, alien bully move on Damon's part. There was nothing else that was out of the norm. It was like living next to normal teenagers. Teenagers that didn't need to get up to change the television channel and got a little uptight after meteorite showers. Dee had explained that Aram used those atmospheric displays as the way to come down to Earth without being detected by the government. I didn't understand how, and she didn't explain, but for a few days after a shower or even a falling star, the siblings were on edge. They would also disappear, sometimes taking a 3-day weekend or missing a Wednesday without any warning. Dee eventually explained that they'd been checking in with the DoD. They continued to tell me that the Aram were not a problem, but I didn't believe them. Not when they took such great lengths to avoid discussing them. Hello, welcome. But Dee was on edge for a whole different reason in class on Thursday. Homecoming was next weekend, and she hadn't found a dress. She had a date with Andrew, or was it Adam? I couldn't tell the incredible blonde duo apart. Everyone was excited about homecoming, it seemed. Streamers hung from the hallways. Banners announced the game against the other school and the dance. Tickets were selling left and right. Lisa and Carissa also had dates. Neither of them had dresses, from the sounds of yesterday's lunch conversation. I, on the other hand, didn't have a date. Hello. They tried to convince me yesterday that going stag wasn't the height of social disaster, and I knew that, but standing up along the wall all night or playing third wheel wasn't my cup of tea. Everybody knew each other in a school as small as PHS. Couples had been together their entire high school stint, friends were shacking up with one another to go to the dance, and I, having no real connection to anyone, seemed dateless. Total killer for the self-esteem. I hear you, girl. After spending math class ignoring Damon's attempts to take me off, Simon appeared by my locker while I switched out one heavy useless book for another heavy useless book. Hey, I said, smiling. I hoped Damon was nowhere nearby because God only knew what he'd do. You look like you fell asleep in class today. He laughed. I kinda did. And I was dreaming about formulations. It was all very frightening. I laughed, shoving the textbook into my backpack as I nudged my locker door shut with my hip. I can imagine. Simon wasn't bad looking. Not if you had a thing for big, burly jocks who looked like they'd tossed bales of hay during the summer. He had arms the size of tree trunks and a charming enough smile. This dude sounds massive. Pretty blue eyes, too. And when he smiled, the skin around those baby blues crinkled. But his eyes weren't green, his lips not poetic. I've never seen you at any of our games, he said, his skin doing that crinkly thing. Not a fan of football? Simon was the starting fullback or lineback. Honestly, I had no clue. I went to one, I told him, and I'd left at halftime with Dee. Both of us had been bored out of our minds. Football isn't my thing. I expected him to leave after that because football was like a religion around here. But he leaned against the locker next to me, folding his arms over his chest. So, I was wondering if he had plans next Saturday. My eyes went up to the red and black banner above his head. Next Saturday was homecoming. My throat dried like a cornered animal, and my eyes got all buggy. No plans at all. You're not going to the dance? He asked. Do I say I don't have a date, or does that sound way too lame? I settled on shaking my head. Simon looked relieved. Would you like to go? Together? My first thought was to say no. I barely knew the guy, and I thought he'd been dating one of the Limber cheerleaders, and I wasn't interested in him. But going with Simon didn't mean I was going to marry him, or even date him. I would be going to a dance with him. And a horrible thought popped in my head. I couldn't wait to see Damon's face when he'd learned I had a date. I told him yes, and we exchanged numbers, and that was that. I was going to the homecoming dance, and now I needed a dress. Mum would be thrilled by this. At lunch, I broke the news to Dee, thinking she'd be excited. Simon asked you to the dance? Dee's mouth had dropped open. She even stopped eating for 5 whole seconds. Did you say yes? I nodded. Yeah? So what? Simon has a reputation, Carissa said, eyeing me over the rim of her glasses. Like he wants to be the PHS bicycle. He wants to give everyone a ride, Lisa clarified with a shrug. But he is cute. I like his arms. Just because he has a reputation, that doesn't mean I'm going to add to it. I poked my salad around my plate. Meatloaf had been on the menu today, so was not braving that. And he was kind of cute when he asked. Him and Kimmy broke up about a week ago or so ago, Carissa said. Supposedly, he was cheating on her with Tammy. Kimmy, this guy, he likes girls with the The Y's at the end, Tammy, Kimmy, and this chick, Katie. Like, you really are the town bicycle, my friend. That was the Limper cheerleader's name, Kimmy. Does he have a thing for girls that end with a Y? There you go. I call it. Lisa snorted. Oh, just like you, it's a match made in heaven. I rolled my eyes. Well, whatever. You got a date. Now all of us can shop for dresses this weekend. Carissa clapped her hands. Oh, and maybe we can carpool together. Sounds fun, right? How about you, Dee? Huh? Dee blinked. Carissa repeated her question, and Dee nodded with a faraway look in her eyes. I'm sure Adam would be okay with that. We made plans to go to Cumberland on Saturday, and Lisa and Carissa were practically bouncing in their seats. Dee didn't look excited. She didn't even look happy. And strangest of all, she didn't finish her lunch or ate half of mine. When I left school that day, I had to walk all the way to the back of the parking lot since I'd been late that morning. The lot lined up with the track and football field, which was empty. It was a total bitch to park there. Cold wind whipped down from the mountains, blasting the entire area of the gravel lot. Katie. I turned around, recognizing the deep voice. I'm sorry. Katie. My heart leapt in my throat. I didn't feel the wind anymore. Squeezing the strap on my bag, I waited for him to catch up to me. Damon stopped in front of me and reached out, fixing the twisted strap on my bag. You know how to pick a parking spot. Caught off guard by the gesture, it took me a moment to respond. I know. We made it to my car, and while I threw my bag in the back seat, Damon waited beside me, his hands shoved into his pockets. There was a dark look to his gaze, a tightness to his lips. My stomach dropped a little. Is everything okay? It's not. No. Damon ran a hand through his hair. Nothing cosmic related. Good. I breathed a sigh of relief, leaning against the car next to him. You scared me for a second. He twisted toward me, and like that, there were only a few inches between us. Thanks, Martin. I hear you going with Simon Cutters to the dance. I pushed back a strand of hair that blew across my face. The wind knocked it right back. News travels fast. Yeah, it does around here. He reached out again, but this time he caught a piece of hair and tucked it behind my ear. His knuckles brushed against my cheek. The slight touch brought that weird tingle along with a shiver that had nothing to do with the cold. Oh, girl. She's getting them electric shivers, know what I'm saying? I thought you didn't like him. He's not bad, I said. Kids were rolling out onto the track, stretching and getting ready to run. He's kind of nice, and he asked me. You're going with him because he asked you? Isn't that how things worked? I nodded. He didn't immediately respond while I fiddled with my car keys. Are you going to the dance? Damon inched closer, his knee brushing my thigh. Does it matter? I bit back a string of curses. Not really. His body angled towards me. You shouldn't go with someone just because he asked you. I glanced down at the keys, wondering if I should stab someone in the eyeball with them. I don't see why this has anything to do with you. You're my sister's friend, and therefore it has something to do with me. Pfft, that's a bit of a stretch, Damon. More like, your boy is jelly. I gaped at him. That is the worst logic I've ever heard. I'm just calling this book. I started around the car, but stopped in the hood. Shouldn't you be more concerned with what Ash is doing? Ash and I aren't together. A stupid part of me liked the idea of them not being together. Shaking my head, I went for the driver's door. Save your breath, Damon. I'm not backing out because you have a problem with it. Cursing under his breath, he followed me. I don't want to see you get into any trouble. What kind of trouble? I yanked my car door. He caught the door, one dark eyebrow arched. Knowing you, I can't even begin to imagine how much trouble you'd get in. Oh yeah, because Simon is going to leave a trace on me that attracts killer cows instead of killer aliens. Let go of my car door. You are so frustrating, he snapped, my eyes flaring with irritation. He has a reputation, Cat. I want you to be careful. I stared at him for a moment. Could it be that Damon was genuinely concerned about my well-being? As soon as that thought popped into my head, I pushed it out. Nothing is going to happen, Damon. I can take care of myself. Yeah, she's a big girl. Fine. He let go of the door so fast that I yanked it back. Cat. Too late, the door caught my fingers. I yelped as pain shot over my hand and up my arm. Ouch! I shook my hand, trying to ease the pain with my fingers. The pointer finger was bleeding. The rest would definitely be bruised and look like sausages by the morning. Tears were already streaming down my cheeks. Christ, that hurt. I've done that before, guys. Hey, Med. Oh, you're Mr. Med now. I've done that before. My grandpa was picking me up from school. I got in the van and my hand was holding the rim of the door. And then someone grabbed the door to close it and slid it closed onto my fingers. And I was in so much shock that I didn't move my fingers. And so they'd done it again because they were just like, why isn't this door closing? And they jammed my fingers again. And I was like, I was like a tiny child. I was probably 6 or 7 maybe. And my fingers were just bruised and huge and oh my goodness. Anyway, it does really hurt when someone closes a door on your fingers. Anyway, I digress. Just PTSD. Without warning or saying a word, his hand shot in, wrapping around my palm. A flash of heat went through my hand, tingling, spreading to the tips of my throbbing fingers and down to my elbow. In an instant, the pain is gone. My mouth dropped. Damon? Our eyes locked. He dropped my hand as if I'd burned him. Shit. Is there another trace on me? I wiped the blood away from my finger. The skin was pink, but already sealed up. Holy crap. He swallowed. It's faint. I don't think it will be a problem. I can barely see it, but you might... No, it's faint. No one will see it. I'm fine. No more babysitting. I drew a shallow breath. Knots formed in my belly. I can take care of myself. Damon watched me for a moment. You're right. Obviously you can, as long as it doesn't involve car doors. You've lasted longer than any human that's known about us. Damon's parting words hung over me like a thick, foreboding cloud. The rest of the night, and well into Saturday, I'd lasted longer than anyone else that had known the truth about them. I couldn't help but wonder when my time would be up. I left with Dee, and we picked up the girls after lunch. It didn't take us long to get to Cumberland and find the dress shop they'd wanted to go to. I'd expected there'd be nothing left to pick from when we walked into the dress barn, but their racks were full. Oh, their racks are full. Sorry. Inappropriate. Carissa and Lisa already had an idea of what they wanted. Something tight. Classic. Dee seemed to navigate toward the pink and frilly. I want to dress... Words, English. I've got this, guys. Don't worry. I am sober. I actually am. I wanted a dress that didn't look like it'd been bedazzled by a grandmother or swallowed by a bow factory. Dee ended up picking out a red... I can't say this word. Anyway, a red dress for me that cinched under the waist and hung loose around my hips and legs. It had a scallop neckline and a little daring, but nothing like what Lisa and Carissa strutted out in. What I wouldn't do for just like that, Lisa muttered, looking disgusted as she stared at Carissa's chest spilling out of her dress. It's not fair. I have an ass and no boobs. Carissa eyed herself in the wall mirror while Dee tried on a pink knee-length dress she'd found, twisting her hair up off her shoulders. Carissa grinned at her reflection. What do you guys think? You look hot, I told her, and she did. She had the perfect hourglass figure. Honey, that's not going to last forever. Dee stepped out, looking absolutely stunning in pink. Her dress had tiny straps and hugged her willowy frame. What is a willowy frame? She took one look at herself, nodded, and went back in to change. I exchanged a grin with Lisa. Our opinion was not needed. Yeah, because there isn't anything in this world that Dee doesn't look good in. She rolled her eyes, grabbing her dress to try on. When it came my turn to try my dress on, I had to give it to Dee. She had a remarkable eye for style. The dress fit my body like it'd been made for me, with its built-in bra, and also made me feel like I could stand beside Carissa and not feel like a little girl. I twisted in front of the mirror, checking out the back. Not too bad. You should pull your hair up, Dee said, appearing beside me. She reached up, artfully twisting my long hair atop my head. You have such a long neck. Show it off. I can do it for you if you'd like, and your makeup too. She's got a long neck, like a giraffe. I nodded, thinking it would be fun. Thank you. I would have never thought I'd look good in this dress. You'd look good in any of these dresses. Dee let go of my hair. Now you need shoes. Speaking of shoes, look, we'll discuss my shoes later. She nodded over to the shoe racks. Anything red or clear would work. The more strappy, the better. The more strappy, not the better. Gonna give you guys that advice now. I poked around the shoes, thinking of a pair of strappy heels I had at home. God knows this dress was going to cost every last cent my mum had happily handed over this morning. I picked up a pair of red heels. They were divine. A skeevy feeling coursed over me as I stood there. I glanced around. The girls were in the back, looking at clutches, and the clerk was behind the counter. The door opened, making a wind chime sound. No one was there. The clerk looked up, frowning, shaking her head. She returned to her magazine. I shivered as my gaze crawled past the door to the windows in front of the store. Beyond the garbed mannequins, a man stood on the sidewalk, looking in. Pervert. Sorry, that's not in the book. It's my little addition. His dark hair was combed back from his pale face. Most of his features were covered with a pair of oversized sunglasses that seemed out of place on such an overcast day. Definitely pervert. He was wearing dark jeans and a leather jacket, and he gave me the creeps. I moved behind the racks and pretended to be checking out another dress. Casually, I lifted my head and peeked over the rack. He was still there. What the hell? I muttered. Either he was waiting for someone in here, or he was a total creeper. I call the creeper part. Or an Aram. I refused to consider the last one. Glancing around the near-empty store, I was going to go with creeper. What are you doing? Lisa came out, tugging on the zipper to a pink trumpet dress that gave her boyish figure curves. Hiding behind the racks? I started to point out the stalker, but when I looked out the window, he was gone. Nothing. I cleared my throat. You guys ready? She nodded, and I darted back to the dressing room and quickly changed. The whole time we checked out, I kept glancing at the window. That eerie feeling was still there, following us back to where Dee had parked. I expected the dude to jump out and scare the living crap out of me at any moment. We folded up our dresses carefully and placed them in the trunk, while Carissa and Lisa climbed in the back seat. Shutting the trunk, Dee turned to me. A small smile was on her face. I didn't tell you this because I'm sure you would have changed your mind about the dress. What? I frowned. Does it make my butt look big? She laughed. No, you look stunning in it. Then what's the deal? Her smile turned downright mischievous. Oh, you know, just that the color red is Damon's favorite. Ooh. Chapter 22. The night of the dance, I was full of nerves. A huge part of me wanted to call Simon and beg off, especially since he nixed the whole carpool idea from the get-go. But my mum had bought the dress, and Dee had done an outstanding job making me look pretty. My hair had been curled and twisted up, exposing my neck. A few strategically placed curls hung over my temples and rested on my bare shoulders. She even sprayed this vanilla-scented glittery stuff in my hair, so when I turned, my hair shimmered. My eyes were a warm brown due to the smoky outline she'd given them. I was also pretty sure she'd applied fake eyelashes because my lashes had never been this long or thick. Firstly, what do you mean I was also pretty sure she'd applied fake eyelashes? You know if someone's applying fake eyelashes to your eyeballs, like, it's a whole deal. Anyway, I digress. Her final touch, before she rushed off to meet up with Lisa, was the gloss she'd painted on my lips, turning them into a perfect shade of ruby. I inspected myself in the mirror before I went downstairs. It was like staring at a stranger, and I made a mental note to wear makeup more often. Sometimes I think I should wear makeup more often, and then I'm just like, nah, fuck that. Mum started crying the moment she saw me. Oh my god, honey, you look so beautiful. She went to hug me, but stopped. I don't want to ruin anything. Let me grab my camera. Even I wouldn't begrudge her at this moment. I waited until she returned and took a dozen pictures. Dressed in her nursing scrubs, she looked kind of funny snapping pictures. Now, this Simon guy, she started, her forehead wrinkling. You never talked about him. Oh, Lord. We're friends, nothing more, so you don't have a thing to worry about. She gave me a motherly look. Whatever happened with the boy next door? Damon, you were hanging out with him a couple of times, right? I shrugged. That was a conversation I couldn't even begin to broach with my mum. We're frenemies. What? Her brows puckered. Nothing, I sighed, glancing at my hand. There wasn't a single mark left on my fingers. There was a trace, though, still lingering faintly, he said. We're friends. Well, that's a shame. She reached out, smoothing down an errant curl. He seemed like such a nice boy. Damon, nice boy? No. A loud engine from outside ended our conversation. I moved over to the window, peeking out. Good Lord, Simon's truck was the size of a submarine. Why didn't you two go to dinner, like Dee was talking about? My mother asked, gathering up the camera for another round of shots. Since Simon had nixed the carpool idea, I'd nixed the dinner. She's really super into this word nixed. Sorry. Simon was meeting me here, which I wasn't too thrilled about, but meeting at the dance seemed stupid, not to mention he had the tickets. I didn't answer as I went to the door and opened it. Simon stood there, dressed in a tux. I was sort of surprised they had ones that fit him. His eyes, which seemed a little bleary, drifted down me in a way that turned my skin the color of my dress. You look hot, he said, thrusting out a corsage that went around my wrist. I winced, hearing my mum clear her throat. Taking the corsage, I stepped outside and let Simon in. Mum, this is Simon. Simon stepped forward, shaking Mum's outstretched hand. Now I see where Katie gets her looks from. My mum arched a brow, turning into the ice queen. Simon had not made a fan. Aren't you kind? I slunk over to his side as I slipped my corsage on, grateful it was not one that had to be pinned on. Simon took having the epic amounts of pictures taken, good-naturedly, wrapping his arm around my waist and smiling for the camera. Oh, I almost forgot. Mum disappeared into the living room, returning with a lacy black shawl. She draped it over my shoulders. This will keep you warm. Thank you, I said, hugging it closer, more grateful for the coverage than she could ever imagine. The dress had seemed fine earlier, but now, with Simon practically drooling on my cleavage, I felt uncomfortable, bearing so much skin. You know what? I think she should wear whatever the heck she wants to wear. And if Simon can't keep his skeevy little eyeballs off, that is his problem. Like, girl, you work it. Mum pulled me aside while Simon waited outside. Make sure you call me when you get home. If anything happens, call me, okay? I'm working in Winchester tonight. She glanced out the door, frowning, but I can leave if need be. Mum, I'll be fine. I leaned over, kissing her cheek. I love you. Love you too. She ushered me to the door. You do look gorgeous. Before the tears could fill her eyes again, I fled the house. Getting in the truck required strategic climbing. I was surprised that I didn't need a stepladder. Man, you do look hot. Simon popped a breath mint in his mouth before he backed out of the long driveway. Ew, Simon, think you're gonna get some? I hoped he wasn't planning to use those breath mints later. Thanks, you look nice too. That was the extent of our conversation. Turns out Simon wasn't a witty conversationalist. Shocking. The ride to school was long and awkward, and I was gripping the edges of my shawl like there was no tomorrow. Several times he glanced over, smiled, and popped another breath mint. Damn, your boy is just like waiting for it, you know? If I was in a car with a guy who was popping breath mints, I would be like, I'm sorry, is there a reason you're doing that? Because it ain't gonna happen, sweetheart. I couldn't wait to get to the dance. When we arrived in the parking lot, I found out why he was popping so many breath mints. Ah, Simon pulled a silver flask from the inside of his tux and took a long swig. He offered it to me next. He was drinking. This was already starting off great. I declined the offer, already making plans to find another ride home. Drinking didn't bother me. Ending up with a drunk driver did. Seeming not to care, he shoved it back in his jacket. Hold on, I'll help get you down. Well, that was nice of him, because I was wondering how in the world I was supposed to get down. He opened the door and smiled. Thank you. Did you want to keep your purse in here? He asked. Oh, hell no. I shook my head and let the tiny clutch dangle from my wrist. Simon took my hand and helped me down from the truck. He pulled a little too hard and I stumbled against his thick chest. Thick? Are you okay? He asked, smiling. I nodded, trying to ignore the icky feeling building in my stomach. Yes, girl. If you feel uncomfortable, bring your stuff with you. Rude, he didn't offer a breath mint. 100%, right? Like, if you're getting out of someone's car and they're just like, oh, you can leave your stuff in my car, and you're just like, actually, no. I would rather take it with me. Don't ever, ever get yourself stuck in those situations. Not that I think you guys would, but look, it's something stupid that us girls need to worry about, which is anyway, on your way. I know how this part ends. Outside, I could hear the steady thump of music from the gymnasium. We stopped before the fogged-over doors, and Simon pulled me toward him in an awkward hug. I'm glad you want to go to the dance with me, he said, his breath minty and tinged with a harsh smell of liquor. Look, you know what? Mints, not going to get rid of the smell of liquor. Not going to get rid of the smell of cigarettes. Like, your boy's dreaming. Same here, I said, trying to mean it. I placed my hand on his belly chest and pushed back. We should go in. Smiling. Sorry, my hair is like tickling my face because it's been raining today, so my hair went all like frizzy and it's just like annoying. Anyway. Same here, I said, trying to mean it. I placed my hands on his burly chest and pushed back. We should go in. Smiling, he slid his arms away. One of his hands slipped down my back over the curve of my hip. I stiffened and told myself it was an accident. It had to be. He surely didn't just cop a feel like that. We hadn't even danced yet. The gymnasium had been converted to an autumn-themed dance. Strings of fall foliage hung from the ceilings and covered the doors. There were pumpkins and cornucopia horns full of leaves stacked in the corner and lining the stage. As soon as we stepped inside, we were surrounded by Simon's friends. Some of them looked me over and gave Simon a not-so-discreet high five or clap on the back. Boys, rude. I've actually had guys do that to my exes. Be like, yeah, dude. It's like, no. It was like, now they could tell I had boobs. I was suddenly cool. Boys could be so juvenile. You said it, girl. While they passed around the flask Simon had brought in, I exchanged strained greetings with the other guys' dates. They were all cheerleaders. Yawn. I scanned the crowd, spying Lisa with her date. I'll be right back. Before Simon could stop me, I darted off toward her. She turned when her date nodded in my direction. I smiled. You look gorgeous. I had to yell to be heard over the music. I feel like I should yell, but you know what? I'm reading this at a very nice, relaxed tone. Not getting too excited. So do you. She gave me a quick hug and then pulled me back. Is he behaving himself? So far. Do you mind? I placed my shawl and clutch on their table when she shook her head. They did a nice job on this. Lisa nodded. Still a gym, though, she laughed. It has that smell. That was true. Carissa quickly joined us, tugging both of us onto the dance floor, minus the guys. I didn't mind. We danced with each other, giggling and being plain out stupid. Lisa danced like a double-jointed hooker. And I think Carissa did the running man at one point. I caught a glimpse of Dee talking to Adam near the stage. Giving the girls a quick wave, I made my way over to them. Dee, she turned towards me, her eyes glistening under the dazzling lights. Hey. I stopped short, my eyes bouncing between them. Adam gave me a tight smile before stalking off into the throng of dancers. Is everything okay? I took her hand, squeezing it. Have you been crying? No, no, she wiped under her eye with a free hand, using her pinky. It's just that I don't think Adam wanted to go with me, and I'm not sure I want to even be here. And it's... She shook her head and pulled her hand free. Anyway, you look great. That dress is to die for. My heart went out to her. It didn't seem fair that she was limited to who she could go out with, especially considering every male Luxon I'd met was a douche. Since they all grew up together, it must be like going to the dance with her brother. Hey, I said, getting an idea. We can bail on this if you want. Go get movies and eat ice cream in our pretty dresses. Sounds like fun, right? We can rent Braveheart. You love that movie. Dee laughed, eyes tearing up again as she pulled me in for a tight hug. No, we're going to enjoy ourselves here. How's your date? I glanced around, not seeing him. Probably drunk somewhere. Oh no. She brushed a strand of hair back. She'd worn her hair down and straightened it so that it fell over her shoulders like a wave of dark water. Bad? Not yet, but I was wondering if I could catch a ride home with you guys. Of course. She started pulling me toward the dance floor. We're probably going to the bonfire afterward. You can come with us, or we can drop you off. Simon hadn't mentioned a party. Maybe I'd get lucky and he'd forget about me. Dee and I skirted the edge of the floor, hand in hand, but I'd almost given up on spotting Lisa in the mess. But then I came to a complete standstill. There was a small candle covered in glass on a white table. It sent a soft, flickering glow over Damon's high cheekbones and full lips. Ash was nowhere in sight, and honestly, I didn't care where she was. Damon's stare was so concentrated. I took an unintentional step back, but we didn't break eye contact. A craving unfurled deep in my stomach, shooting through like heat lightning. And that was the kind of feeling you couldn't force. Couldn't even replicate if you wanted. And then Simon was in front of me, capturing my hand and pulling me away from Dee and out onto the dance floor. It wasn't a slow dance, but he wrapped his beefy arm around my waist and pulled me against his chest anyway. The hard edge of his flask cut into my ribs. You disappeared on me, he said, his lips brushing my ear, dousing my neck in alcohol fumes. I thought you up and left me. No, I saw friends. I tried pulling back, but I was stuck to him. Where are your friends? Huh? He yelled, unable to hear me in the music as the music increased. There's a party tonight down in the field. Everyone is going. One of his hands was low on my back, his finger resting on the flare of my bum. What is the flare of one's bum? Does one's bum even flare? We should go. Damn it. I don't know. Curfew, I yelled back, trying to maneuver his hand off my rear. So, it's homecoming. It's time to party. I didn't bother responding. I was too busy avoiding his hands, which were everywhere. We danced another song before I could successfully extract myself, and the only reason I could was because Carissa saved me. Things were all over the place then. I spied Ash sitting at the table, looking pissed, while Damon stared at the floor. Several bathroom breaks and dances later, I ended up back with Simon. For a human, he sure knew how to sneak up on someone. He didn't reek of alcohol this time around, but damn it, his hands were super friendly as we moved in a tight circle. I could feel every last inch of him, and he didn't seem to mind. I was starting to sweat when one of his hands dropped off my shoulder, narrowly avoiding my breast. I jerked back, glaring at him. Simon? What? He looked innocent. Sorry, my hand slipped. Oh yeah, my hand slipped. I've heard that a few times before, but it wasn't the hand, you know. Anyway. His hand slipped to my rosy red butt. I looked away, debating what to do. I needed to disappear, quick. Mind if I cut in? Sorry. Mind if I cut in? A deep voice asked from behind me. Simon's blue eyes widened, and I twisted around, Damon stood there, a hard look on his face. He wasn't looking at me. His eyes were focused on Simon in challenge, as if he dared the boy to say no. After a terse second, Simon released me. Perfect timing. Perfect timing. I needed to get a drink anyway. He cocked a brow at Simon and then looked at me. Dance? Having no idea what he was up to, I gingerly placed my hands on his shoulders. This is a surprise. He didn't say anything as he wrapped one arm around my waist and reached up, taking hold of one of my hands. The music slowed down until it seemed to crawl by in a haunting melody about love lost and found again. I stared up into those extraordinary eyes, stunned that he could hold me so tenderly. My heart thudded as blood rushed to every point in my body. Oh, blood rushed to every point in her body, guys. It had to be the dance, the dress, the way he filled out his tux. I'm not even gonna. He pulled me closer. Excitement and dread warred inside me. The dazzling lights overhead reflected in his midnight hair. Are you having a good time with Ash? Are you having a good time with Happy Hands? I bit down on my lip. Such a constant smartass. He chuckled in my ear, sending shivers through me. The three of us came together, Ash, Andrew, and me. His hand rested above my hip, having a totally different impact on me. My skin tingled underneath his chiffon. Damon cleared his throat as he glanced away. You look beautiful, by the way. Really too good to be with that idiot. A blush stole over my skin, and I lowered my gaze. Are you high? Unfortunately, no, I'm not. Though I am curious why you would ask. You never say anything nice to me. Good point, he sighed. Damon moved a little closer and turned his head slightly. His jaw grazed my cheek, and I jumped. I'm not going to bite you or grope you. You can relax. My witty retort died on his lips when he moved his hand from my hip and guided my head to his shoulder. The moment my cheek touched his tux-covered shoulder, there was a dizzying rush of sensations. His hand settled on my lower back again, and we moved slowly to the music. After a while, he started humming under his breath, and I closed my eyes. This wasn't nice. It was thrilling. Seriously, how's your date going? He asked. I smiled. He's a little friendly. That's what I thought. He turned his head, and for a moment his chin rested against my hair. Then he lifted his head. I warned you about him. Damon, I said softly, wanting him to not ruin the mood. There was something peaceful about this, lulling. I have him under control. He snorted. Sure looks like a kitten. His hands were moving so fast, I was beginning to question if he was human or not. I stiffened, my eyes opening. I counted to 10. I made it to 3 before he spoke again. You should sneak out of here and go home whilst he's distracted. His hand tightened around me. I can even get Dee to morph into you if need be. Shocked that he'd even go to the extreme, I pulled back and looked up at him. It's okay if he gropes your sister? I know she can take care of herself. You're out of your league with that guy. We'd stopped dancing, oblivious to the other couples. Disbelief coursed through me. Excuse me? I'm out of my league? Look, I drove here. I can let Dee catch a ride with Andrew and take you home. He sounded like he had everything planned out, and then his eyes narrowed. Are you actually considering going to the party with that idiot? Are you going? I asked, pulling my hand free from his. My other hand was still on his chest, and his arm still circled my waist. It doesn't matter what I'm doing. Frustration punctuated each of his words. You're not going to that party. You can't tell me what to do, Damon. His eyes narrowed, but I could see the eerie glow beginning to form in his eyes, overshadowing his pupils. Dee is taking you home, and I swear if I have to throw you over my shoulder and carry you out of here, I will. My hand curled into a useless fist against his chest. I'd like to see you try. He smiled, eyes starting to gleam in the darkness. I bet you would. Whatever, I said, ignoring the looks we were starting to get from everyone. Over his shoulder, I saw Mr. Garrison watching us, which worked to my benefit. You're the one who's going to cause a scene, carrying me out of here. Damon made a noise that really sounded like a growl. Anyway, anyone in their right mind would have been terrified, and I should have been, considering considering I knew what he was capable of. I wasn't. Because your local alien teacher is watching us as we speak. What do you think he's going to believe when you toss me over his shoulder, buddy? Every inch of him stiffened. I smiled like the cat that ate an entire aquarium full of fish. Thought so. Surprisingly, he returned the smile. I keep underestimating you, kitten. Stealth mode Simon appeared before I had the chance to gloat over that major win. You ready? Simon asked, glancing between Damon and me. Everyone is leaving for the party. Damon's look dared me not listen to him, and that's pretty much why I agreed. He didn't control my life. I did. Yes, girl. Chapter 23. The field was about 2 miles outside of Petersburg, heading in the opposite direction of my house. It was literally a gargantuan harvested cornfield. Enormous bales of hay covered the landscape as far as I could see, lit in orange and red. I couldn't help but think the combination of dried hay and fire wouldn't end well. This is true. Someone tapped a keg. Correction, the combination of hay, fire, and cheap beer couldn't end well. Simon had kept his hands to himself the whole way here, so I was feeling pretty good about my decision with the exception of the above foreseeable problem. He led me through the trampled cornstalks toward the fire. The girls are over there. He pointed to the other side of the fire, where several girls were clustered together, sharing red plastic cups. You should go say hi, mingle a little. I nodded, having no intention of going there. Yeah, I feel that, girl. You know what? I digress, but you know what I hate about going to parties with somebody? Is that people expect you to go over and mingle with the other ladies. And I'm like, nah, son, I would rather hang out with the dudes, like smash a few beers and play cards and talk shit. Why would I want to go over and sit with the girls? They like talk about the most boring stuff, like mind-numbing stuff, when I could be sitting with the dudes talking about video games. That's all I'm saying. Anyway. I'll get us a drink. He leaned in, squeezing my shoulders before heading off. The moment he reached the keg, he gave some other burly dude a high five and let out a loud, hooray. Quite a crowd was gathering around the fire, pushing back to the surrounding woods. Someone had pulled a truck up, turning on the radio, and left the doors open, making it nearly impossible to hear anything. Clutching the shawl around my shoulders, I moved along the edges, looking for a familiar face. Relieved, I saw Dee standing with the Thompson triplets. Beside them, Carissa and Lisa shed a blanket. Damon was nowhere to be seen. Dee, I called, weaving out of the way of a girl teetering in high heels. Dee. She turned, and then seconds later, she waved her hand wildly. I took a step in her direction, and Simon appeared out of nowhere, 2 cups in hand. Oh my God, I said, stepping back. You scared me. Simon laughed, handing me a cup. I don't see how. I was calling your name. Sorry. I took the drink, wrinkling my nose at the distinct smell. Taking a sip, I learned it didn't taste much better than it smelled. It's kind of hard to hear with all that noise. I know, and we haven't had a chance to talk at all. Simon draped his arm over my shoulder, stumbling a little. And that sucks. I've wanted to talk to you all night. Did you like the corsage? It's beautiful. Thank you again. It was pretty. A combination of pink and red roses. Did you get it in town? He nodded, and then downed the contents of his cup as he moved away from the truck. My mum works at a local florist shop. She made it. Wow, that's pretty cool. I plucked at it, careful not to spill any beer on it. Does your dad work in town? Nope, he commutes into Virginia. He tossed the cup to the side and pulled out the flask. He's a lawyer, he boasted, unscrewing the lid with one hand. Handles personal injury claims. His brother is a doctor in town, though. My mum, she's a nurse, and she works in Virginia too. All of his movements were pulling on the shawl. It was halfway off my shoulders. Do you know where you're going to college yet? I asked, struggling for something to say. Friendly hands aside, he was sort of nice. Going to VWU with the buds. He frowned at my own untouched drink. You don't drink? Oh, no, I do. I took a sip to prove it. He smiled and looked off, talking about which of his friends were planning on going to Marshall instead of WVU. When he wasn't looking, I dumped half the cup out. Simon kept on asking questions, interrupted every few minutes when one of his friends would swing by. I dumped most of my drink out, which earned me several refills. Girl, don't waste that shiz. Simon told me to stand wherever we were, as he hustled back and forth between the keg. By my third pretend cup, Simon was probably thinking I was a lush, but at least he was getting a great workout. What is a lush? When you describe someone as a lush, what is that? Is my question. Before I knew it, we were a good distance away from the bonfire, among the first cropping of trees. Each step became more difficult, partly due to the uneven ground and my heels, and even the slightest bit of Simon's weight was hard to support. Simon straightened and pulled his arm off my shoulders, taking the shawl along with him. It fluttered somewhere behind me, quickly blending in with the shadowy ground and thick undergrowth. Crap, I said, turning around, squinting. What? He slurred a little. My shawl, I dropped it. I took a couple of steps back toward the fire. You look better without, he said. That dress, damn. I shot him an annoyed look over my shoulder before returning to staring at everything that looked black. Yeah, well, it belongs to my mum, and she'll kill me if I lose it. We'll find it. Don't worry about it now. Suddenly, his arm was around my waist, pulling me back. Startled, I dropped the cup of beer and let out a nervous laugh as I twisted out of his grasp. I think I need to go find it now. It can't wait? Simon took a step closer to me, and I took one back. He was standing in front of me, and I realized I was trapped between him and a tree. We were talking, and there's this thing I wanted to do. I glanced over at the bonfire. It seemed too far away now. What? He placed a massive hand on my shoulder, and his grip was tight. The feeling that crept over me was more than just the ick factor. It was something else. It was more powerful, leaving a strange taste on the roof of my mouth, like when the Aram had spoken to me outside the library. He leaned in, pulling me forward at the same time, dipping his head. I froze for a second, and that was all it took. His mouth was on mine, tasting of beer and breath mints. He made a sound and pushed forward. My back was against a tree before I could shove him back. And he still kept pushing forward, kissing my tightly sealed lips. I couldn't breathe. Placing my hands on his chest, I pushed until I was able to wrench my mouth free. Whoa there, Simon, that's too much, I said, dragging in air. I tried to wiggle myself free, but he was unmovable. Oh, come on, it's not too much. His hand worked its way between me and the tree until it was against my back, holding me in place. No, it's no, boy. Like, come on, get the hint. I pushed again against his chest, angry. I didn't come here for this. Simon laughed. Everyone comes here for this. Look, we're both drinking, both having fun. There's nothing wrong with that. I won't even tell anyone if you don't want me to. Everyone knows you did it with Damon over the summer. What? I screeched. Simon, let me. His sloppy, wet lips cut off my words. His tongue slipped into my mouth, and I wanted to puke. His heart raced. My heart rate tripled, and in an instant, I wished I'd listened to Damon, that I had taken him up on his offer to go home, because this was out of my league. I managed to get my head free. Simon, stop. Hang on. Firstly, she made her decision. Some dude, fucking Damon, tells her, don't do it, you need to do this. But she's like, you know what, I got this, son. And you know what, she did have it. Not her fault that guy's creepy and slimy and doesn't understand that, like, step off means step the F off. All I'm saying is, she should not blame herself, and she should not think that, oh, XYZ person was right. Anyway, I digress. I managed to get my head free. Simon, stop. There you go. She said stop. And then Simon did stop. I sagged against a tree, dazed and breathless. There was a sound of someone hitting the ground, and then a wounded cry. Someone was bending over a sprawled Simon, reaching down and picking him up by the scruff of his neck. Do you have a problem with understanding simple English? I recognized that deep baritone. It was the same voice Damon had used the day I'd been gardening. Deadly quiet, dangerously low. He was breathing heavily as he stared at the cowering boy. Man, I'm sorry, Simon slurred, grasping Damon's wrist. You thought what? Damon lifted him onto his feet. That no meant yes? No, yes, I thought. Damon raised his hand, and Simon just stopped. Arms raised, hands splayed out mid-air in front of his face. Blood that had been trickling out of his nose stopped on his open mouth, eyes wide and unblinking. A look of fear and drunken confusion was frozen on his face. Damon had literally frozen Simon. I stepped forward. Damon, what did you do? He didn't look at me, his eyes trained on Simon. It was either this, or I'd kill him. There was no doubt in my mind that he was capable of killing him. I poked Simon's arm. It felt real, but stiff, like a corpse. I swallowed. Is he alive? Should he be? He asked. A look passed between us, heavy with understanding and regret. Damon's jaw tensed. He's fine, right now. It's like he's sleeping. Simon looked like a statue, a drunk and pervy statue. God, what a mess. I backed up, wrapping my hands around myself. How long will he stay like this? As long as I want, he replied. I could leave him out here, let the deer piss on him, and the crows crap on him. You can't do that, you know, right? Damon shrugged. You need to turn him back, but first, I'd like to do something. Damon cocked a brow with curiosity, dragging in a deep breath, which still tasted like cheap beer, mince, and Simon's tongue. Ew. I kicked him straight between the legs. Simon didn't react, but he'd feel it later. Whoa! Damon let out a strangled half laugh. Maybe I should have killed him. He frowned when he saw the expression on my face. He turned back to Simon and waved his hand. The boy doubled over, cupping his hands between his legs. Shit! Damon pushed Simon back. Get the fuck out of my face, and I swear, if you so much as look at her again, it will be the last thing you do. Simon was 3 shades whiter as he wiped his hand over his bloody nose. His eyes darted from me to Damon. Katie, I'm sorry. Get out of here. Damon bit out, taking a threatening step forward. Simon spun around and took off, stumbling and limping over bushes. Dead silence fell between us. Even the music seemed to have become muted. Damon turned around and slowly and stalked off. I stood there, shivering. Damon was going to leave me here. I didn't blame him. He warned me several times, and I hadn't listened. Tears of anger and frustration burned my eyes. I'm gonna go there. But then he returned, clutching my shawl in his hand. He handed it to me, cursing under his breath. Hand shaking, I took the shawl from him and saw that his eyes were glowing. How long had he been like that? I could feel his eyes on me, heavy and intense. I know, I whispered, clutching the shawl to the front of my torn dress. Please don't say it. Say what? That I told you so? He sounded disgusted. Even I'm not that much of an ass. Are you okay? I nodded and drew in a deep breath. Thank you. Damon cursed again, and then he was moving closer, dropping something warm that smelled... Sorry. Dropping something warm that smelled like him over my shoulders. Here, he said gruffly, put this on. It will cover up everything. I looked down. The lacy shawl did nothing to hide the ripped bodice of my dress. Flushing, I slipped my arms into his tux jacket. Tears were clogging my throat now. I was angry at Simon, at myself, and embarrassed. Once I had the jacket on, I hugged it and the shawl close. Damon was never going to let me live this one down. Right now, he might not be throwing it in my face, but there was always tomorrow. Damon's fingers brushed over my cheek, tugging a strand of hair that had fallen loose behind my ear. Come on, he whispered. I lifted my head. There was an unexpected softness in his eyes. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Now he'd be nice? I'm taking you home. This time it wasn't an arrogant command or assumption. It was just simple words. I nodded. After the disaster that had happened and the fact I figured I had another trace on me, I wasn't going to argue. Then it struck me. Wait. He looked like he was ready to come through on his earlier threat and throw me over his shoulders. Cat. Won't Simon have a trace on him, like me? If the thought had crossed his mind, it didn't look like it bothered him. He does. But Damon, sorry, I'm just dying. Damon was in my face in the blink of an eye. It's not my problem now. Then he took my arm. His grasp wasn't tight, but it was firm. We didn't talk as he led me through the brisk night air toward his SUV, parked near the main road. Several of the cars we passed were fogged up. Some were even moving. Every time I glanced at him, his eyes were narrowed and jaw clenched. Guilt chewed through my insides like acid. What if the Aram was still around, and they saw the trace on Simon? Yeah, he was borderline date rapist, but what would the Aram do to him? We couldn't leave him out there, roaming around with a trace on him. He let go of my arm and opened the passenger door of the SUV. I got in, wiggling the clutch's strap off my wrist and placing it beside me. I watched him head around the car, texting on his phone. Damon climbed into the driver's seat, passing me a sheltered look. I let Dee know I was taking you home. When I got here, she said she saw you but couldn't find you. Nodding, I started yanking on the seatbelt, but it wouldn't move. All my frustration rose up and I pulled on it hard. Damn it. Girl, you gotta relax that seatbelt, let it restart, and then pull it again. Damon leaned over me and pried my fingers off. In such a small space, there wasn't much room to move around, and before I could protest, he was already tugging on the seatbelt. His jaw grazed my cheek, and then his lips followed. There were quick touches, all accidental, but I found it hard to breathe nonetheless. Damon got the seatbelt unstuck, and as he brought it across my stomach, the back of his knuckles grazed over the front of my dress. I jerked in the seat. He lifted his head, startled, and I was just as surprised. Our mouths were nearly touching. His breath was warm and sweet, intoxicating. His gaze dropped to my lips, and my heart started doing all kinds of crazy stuff in my chest. Neither of us moved for what seemed like an eternity. And then he clicked it in and returned to his seat, breathing raggedly. He clutched the steering wheel for several strained minutes while I tried to remember how important it was to take normal breaths and not gulps of air. Without saying a word, he pulled out onto the road. There was a thick, strained silence in the car. The ride home was near torturous. I wanted to thank him again and ask him about what he planned to do with Simon, but I had a feeling it wouldn't go over well. I ended up resting my head back against the seat, feigning sleep. Cat, he said, about halfway home. I pretended I didn't hear him. Childish, I know, but I didn't know what to say. He was a complete mystery to me. Every action was in contradiction of another. And I could feel his eyes on me, and it was hard to ignore that. Just as hard as it was to ignore whatever was between us. Shit! Damon exploded, slamming on the brakes. My eyes snapped open, shocked to find a man in the middle of the road. The SUV skidded to a halt, throwing me forward, and then the seatbelt painfully biting my shoulder and yanking me back. Then the car simply turned off. Engine, lights, everything. Damon spoke in a language that was soft and musical. I'd heard it before, when the Aram had attacked me at the library. I recognized the man in front of our car. He wore the same dark jeans, sunglasses, and leather jacket I'd seen the day outside the dress shop. And then another man appeared, nearly identical to him. I couldn't even see where he came from. He was like a shadow slipping out from the trees. Then a third appeared, joining the other to stand behind the first guy. They didn't move. Damon, I whispered, my heart leaping into my throat. Who are they? A fierce light, blinding white, lit up his eyes. Aram. Chapter 24. Fear rose so quickly, it left me dizzy, almost numb. And how could I be so numb when surely I should be feeling a dozen emotions? Damon reached down and yanked up his pant leg. There was a ripping sound like Velcro. He held something long, dark, and shiny. Only when he shoved it into my shanky hands did I realize it was some kind of black glass shaped into a dagger, sharpened into a fine point and on one end, and a leather binding on the other. This is obsidian, volcanic glass. The edge is wicked sharp and will cut through anything, he explained quickly. It's the only thing on this planet, besides us, that can kill the Aram. This is their kryptonite. I stared at him as my fingers wrapped around the leather sheath. Come on, pretty boy, yelled the Aram in the front, his voice sharp as razors and guttural. He had a thick, foreign-sounding accent. Come out and play. Damon ignored them and grabbed my cheeks, his hands steady and strong. Listen to me, Cat. When I tell you to run, you run, and you don't look back no matter what. If any of them, chase you, all you have to do is stab them, anywhere, with the obsidian. Damon, no, you run when I tell you to run, Cat. Say you understand. There were 3 of them, only one of Damon. The odds weren't good. Please don't do this. Run with me. I can't. Dee's at the party. His eyes met mine for a second. Run when I tell you. And then he turned, letting out a resigned sigh, and opened the car door. Damon's shoulders squared, and his swagger was full of confidence. That cocky smile, the one I'd wanted to smack off his face many times, appeared on his lips. Wow, Damon said. You guys are uglier as humans than you are in your true form. Didn't think that was possible. You look like you've been living under a rock. See the sun much? The one in the front, presumably their leader, snarled. You have your arrogance now, like all Luxon. But where will your arrogance be when we absorb your powers? In the same place as my foot, Damon replied, hands balling to fists. The leader looked confused. You know, as in, up your ass? Damon smiled, and the 2 Aram hissed. Wait, you guys look familiar. Yeah, I know. I've killed one of your brothers. Sorry about that. What was his name? You guys all look alike to me. Their forms started flickering in and out, turning from human to shade and back again. I reached for the door handle, clenching the dagger in my hand. Blood pumped through my body so fast, everything slowed down. I'll rip your essence from your body, the Aram growled, and you will beg for mercy. Like your brethren did? Responded Damon, voice and cold. Because he begged, he cried like a little girl before I ended his existence. And that was it. The Aram bellowed in unison, the sound of howling winds and death. My breath caught in my throat. Damon threw up his hands, and a great roar started under the car, shaking the road and the trees thrashed outside. A loud crack sounded, like a blast of thunder, quickly followed by several more in succession. The earth seemed to shake and rumble. I turned to the window and gasped. The trees were being ripped out from the ground, their thick and gnarled roots dripping clumps of moist dirt. An earthy scent filled the air. Oh my god, Damon was uprooting trees. One smacked right into the back of an Aram, taking him several feet down the road. Trees toppled over. Some landed in the road, cutting off potential for any innocent driver to happen upon the scene. Branches broke off, flying through the air like daggers. The other 2 Aram avoided them, blinking in and out as they advanced on Damon, the branches shooting through their shade form without resistance. The ground under the SUV trembled. All along the side of the road, chunks of the shoulder broke free from the road. Huge sections of asphalt spun into the air, turning bright orange as though heated from within, and zinged straight at the Aram. Good God, I was so going to reconsider pissing Damon off next time. The Aram dodged the asphalt and trees, throwing back what looked like globs of oil. Where the murky stuff landed, the road smoked. Burnt tar filled the air. Then Damon was nothing but blinding white light, a being that was not human, but otherworldly, beautiful and frightening in the same breath. The glow heightened around his outstretched limbs, forming a crackling ball of energy that snapped. Light dripped onto the road. Power lines overhead snapped and then exploded. The Aram blinked out, but their shadows couldn't hide from Damon's light. I could see them moving toward him still. One darted out to the side, rushing him. Damon brought his hands together, and the blast that followed shook the car. Light erupted from him, zinging straight into the one nearest, sending the Aram spinning up into the air. where for a moment he was in a human form. Dark sunglasses shattered. Pieces floated in the air, suspended. Another clap followed, and then the aram exploded in an array of dazzling lights that fell like 1,000 twinkling stars. Damon threw out his arm, and the other aram flew back several feet, spinning and tumbling through the air. But he landed in a crouch. Run. The voice came from my head. The voice came in my head. Run now, cat. Don't look back. Run. I threw the car door open and stumbled out, falling to my knees. I scrambled down the ditch, wincing at the sound of the aram's howls. I made it to the first tree that was still standing and stopped. Instinct told me to keep running, to do as Damon instructed, but I couldn't leave him there. I couldn't run away. With my heart leaping in my throat, I turned around. The two remaining aram were circling him, fading out to nothing more than shadows and then reforming back into tall, imposing figures. Thick globs of midnight oil shot past Damon, narrowly missing the halo of light surrounding him. One of the dark streams smacked into a tree and on the other side of the road, splitting it in two. Damon retaliated by throwing balls of light at them, wicked fast and deadly. They whizzed through the air, forming walls of flames, and fizzled out when they didn't hit one of the aram. The aram were not as fast as Damon, but they managed to avoid each of his missiles. After about 30 were lobbed, I could tell Damon's light form was slowing down, the time between bombs stretching longer and longer. I remembered what he said after he'd stopped the truck. Using his powers wore him out. He couldn't keep this up. Terror trickled through me as I saw them close in on Damon, their darkness nearly enveloping his light. A ball of red flames formed and shot out toward the aram, but Damon missed. The ball of fire skidded across the road, fizzing out harmlessly. One of the aram flickered out completely, while the other kept throwing oily bombs at Damon over and over, never slowing down. Damon flickered in and out, reappearing a few feet from each projectile. He was moving so fast, the entire scene started to look like I was watching it unfold under strobe lights. Damon was focused on one aram, lobbing oil bombs, and he didn't see the other appear behind him. The shadowy arms wrapped around what appeared to be Damon's head, bringing him down to his knees on the side of the road. I cried out, but the sound was lost in the aram's laugh. Ready to beg? The aram in front of him taunted, taking human form. Please do. It would mean a lot to hear the word please leaking from your lips as I take everything from you. Damon didn't respond, but his light was crackling and intense. Silence to the end, eh? So be it. The aram stepped forward, lifting his head. Baruch, it is time. Baruch forced Damon to stand. Do it now, Seraphith. A part of my brain clicked off. I was moving without thinking, running toward the very thing Damon had ordered me to run away from. The obsidian grew warm in my hand as I rushed up the gully, burning like coals. A heel on my shoe snapped off when it became tangled in the downward branches, but I kept going. I wasn't brave. I was desperate. Seraphith turned into a shadow, thrusting an arm forward into the center of Damon's chest. Damon's scream tore through me, heightening the fear, flipping it into anger and desperation. Damon's light flared, blinding and concentrated. The ground shook with a giant tremor. Only a few feet behind Seraphith now, I threw my arm back, obsidian in hand, and jumped forward and brought it down with every ounce of strength I had. I expected to meet resistance, flesh and bone, but the obsidian cut through the shadow like Seraphith was made of nothing more than smoke and air, and I stumbled to my knees. Seraphith jerked back, pulling his arm free of Damon's light. He spun around, his shadowy arms reaching for me. I scrambled backward and falling down. The obsidian glowed in my hand, humming with energy. And then Seraphith stopped. Pieces of him broke free from his form, clumps of darkness drifting into the sky, obscuring the stars until all of him was there 1 minute and floating away the next. Baruch released Damon, taking a step back. For a moment he was in human form, dark jeans and a jacket, his expression horrified, gaze locked in the glowing obsidian in my grip. His eyes met mine only for a second. Vengeance had been promised in that minute stare. And then he was a shadow, pulling the darkness into him, fleeing toward the other side of the road like a coiled snake and disappearing into the light. I scuttled over branches and cracked pavement in a mad dash to reach Damon's side. He was still nothing more than light, and I had no idea where to touch him or how badly he was hurt. Sorry. Damon, I whispered, dropping to my bleeding knees in front of him. My lips, hands, everything trembled. Damon, please say something. His light flared, throwing off a wave of heat, but he made no sound or movement, not even a whisper of words, in my thoughts. What if someone came by? How in the world could I explain any of this? And what if he was injured, dying? A sob rose in my throat. My cell phone. I could call Dee. She'd know what to do. She had to. I started to stand when I felt a hand on my arm. I whipped around, and there was Damon, in human form, kneeling on the ground, his head bowed but grip strong. Damon, oh my God, are you okay? I knelt, placing my hand on his warm cheek. Please tell me you're okay, please. He slowly lifted his head, placing his other hand on mine. Remind me, he paused, drawing in a stuttered gasp, to never piss you off again. Christ, are you secretly a ninja? I laughed and sobbed in the same breath, and I threw my arms around him, almost knocking him flat on his back. I buried my face in his neck, inhaling his earthy scent. He didn't have a choice but to hug me back. His arms swept around me, a hand delving deep into the curls that had fallen loose. You didn't listen to me, he murmured against my shoulder. I never listened to you. I squeezed him hard. Swallowing, I pulled back a little, searching his weary but beautiful face. Are you hurt? Is there anything I can do? You've already done enough, kitten. He stood, bringing me along with him. Drawing in a breath, he looked around. We need to get out before anyone comes. I wasn't sure how that would help. It looked like a tornado had come through here, but then Damon backed off and waved his hand. All down the road, trees were lifted off the road and rolled to the sides, clearing the path. The action barely fazed him. Come on, Damon said. On the way back to the car, I remembered I still had the obsidian in my fist. The car started as soon as Damon turned the key, much to our mutual relief. Are you okay? Hurt in any way? He asked. I'm okay. I was shaking. It's just a lot, you know. He gave a short laugh, but then he hit the steering wheel with his fist. I should have known there would be more coming. They travel in fours. Damn it. I held his obsidian closer, staring straight ahead. The adrenaline was fading, and I was trying to process everything that had happened tonight. There were only 3 of them. Yeah, because I killed the first one. He pulled his cell phone out of his pocket, and I'm sure they were pissed about that. We'd killed 2 more, so I figured that meant 1 remaining would be really pissed. Angry aliens, a small hysterical laugh bubbled up, and I clamped my mouth shut. He called his sister then, ordering Dee to get to the Thompsons and stay with Mr. Garrison until it was daylight. Whereas the Aram was stronger at night, using the darkness to move undetected and feeding on the shadows. The Luxon were the opposite, stronger during the day. Damon gave them bare details of what had happened, and I heard him tell Dee that I was okay. Kat, are you okay? Seriously, he asked me after he hung up, concerned. I nodded. I was alive. He was alive. We were okay, but I couldn't stop shaking, couldn't forget the sound of Damon's scream. Damon wanted me to stay the night at his place. Yeah, he did. His reasoning was the bare truth. There was another one out there, and until they knew where the Aram was, it was safer being with him. For the second time that night, I didn't argue. I didn't kid myself his invitation was out of concern for me. It was more from necessity. After I called my mum and told her I was staying the night with Dee, which she protested, but eventually relented too, Damon took me up to the guest room I'd woken up in the morning after finding out about them. It seemed like a lifetime ago. Damon had been quiet since we arrived at his house, his thoughts a million miles away. He left me in the guest room with a pair of worn flannel pajama bottoms and a shirt that looked like it belonged to Dee. In the guest bathroom, I quickly stripped off the ruined dress, rolling it up and tossing it into their wastebasket. I never wanted to see it again. The hot water couldn't soothe the ache in me. I'd never felt the way I did now. Every muscle screamed, and my mind was weary with exhaustion. I stepped out of the shower, my legs shaking, and even in the heat of the steamy bathroom, I felt cold. I slowly wiped the steam off the mirror, shocked by the reflection that peered back at me. My eyes were wide. My cheeks were ghastly pale, and drawn tight over my cheekbones. I looked more like an alien than my friends did. I laughed and then immediately cringed. It sounded choked and ugly, shocking in the quiet room. Baruch would come back. Wasn't that why Damon had been quiet? Knowing that the Aram would seek revenge against his family, there was nothing he could do, or I could even hope to do. Are you okay in there? Damon called through the closed door. Yeah. I quickly ran my fingers through my damp hair, pushing thick sections off my face. Yeah, I whispered again. I changed into the clothes he'd brought me, and they felt warm, smelling faintly of laundry detergent and crisp leaves. He was sitting on the edge of the bed when I came back, looking tired and young. He'd already changed into a pair of sweats and a shirt. Are you okay? I asked. He nodded. Whenever we use our powers, it's like losing a part of ourselves. It takes a bit to recharge. Once the sun comes up, I'll be fine. He paused, meeting my eyes. I'm sorry you had to go through any of this. I stopped in front of him. Sorry wasn't something that was in his vocab often. Neither were his next words. I suspected. I didn't say thank you, he said, staring up at me. You should have run, Kat. They would have killed you without thinking twice. But you saved my life. Thank you. Words stalled on my breath. I stared at him. Will you stay with me tonight? I rubbed my arms. I'm not coming on to you. You don't have to, but I know. He stood, his brow wrinkling. Just let me check the house again and I'll be right back. I climbed into bed, tugging the covers up to my chin while I stared at the ceiling. Closing my eyes, I counted silently until I heard Damon's footsteps. When I opened my eyes, he was standing in the doorway, watching me. Lord of the Rings next, please. I've been here and pretending to listen all along. Promise! I scooted to the far edge of the bed, leaving him plenty of room. A strange thought ran through my brain as I watched him watching me. Watching you, watching me, watching you, sorry. Had he ever been in a bed with a human girl? Seemed like such a stupid thing to even think about. Relationships with humans weren't prohibited. They just made little sense. And after everything that had happened, why would I be thinking about that? Damon locked the door, checking the large bay windows, and then wordlessly settled into the bed, his arms crossed over his chest, much like mine. We lay there, staring up at the ceiling, and my heart was racing. It could have been everything that had happened, or the fact that Damon was here, so close and alive, but I was hyper-aware of everything. Of his slow, steady breaths, the heat radiating off his body, and my own need to be enveloped in that warmth. A strained silence descended as I ran my fingers over the edge of the blanket. Then, against my will, I looked at him. Damon stared back, a lopsided grin on his face. A laugh bubbled out of me. This is so awkward. The skin around his eyes crinkled as a grin spread. It is, isn't it? Yes, I gasped for breath, giggling. It seemed wrong to laugh after everything that had just happened, but I couldn't help it. Once I started, I couldn't stop. I'd faced down a possible date rapist and an alien horde hell-bent on sucking up Damon's essence. Crazy sauce. She said crazy sauce. His laughter joined mine until tiny tears tracked down my cheeks. The sound of his laughter faded as he reached over, chasing the drops with his fingers. I stilled, staring at him. His fingers left my cheek, but his gaze remained locked on mine. What you did back there? It was sort of amazing, he murmured. A sweet thrill jolted through me. Right back at you. Are you sure you're not injured? Damon's crooked grin returned. No, I'm fine, thanks to you. He shifted, turning off the lamp beside the bed before settling again. I searched for something to say in the darkness. Am I glowing? Like a Christmas tree. Not just the star? The bed moved a little, and I felt his hand brush my arm. No, you're super bright. It's kind of like looking at the sun. Now that was odd. I held up my hand faintly, faintly able to see the outline of it in the darkness. It's going to be hard for you to sleep then. Actually, it's kind of comforting. It reminds me of my own people. I turned my head, and he was lying on his side, watching me. A flutter formed in my chest. The whole Obsidian thing? You never told me about that. I didn't think it would be necessary, or at least I'd hoped it wouldn't be. Can it hurt you? No. And before you ask what can, we don't make the habit of telling humans what can kill us. He replied evenly. Not even the DoD knows what's deadly to us. But the Obsidian negates the Aram's strengths, just like the beta quartz in the rocks throws off a lot of energy we put off. But with Obsidian, all it takes is a piercing. And, well, it's the whole light thing, the way Obsidian fractures it. Are all crystals harmful to the Aram? No, just this type. I guess it has something to do with the heating and cooling. Matthew explained it to me once. Honestly, I wasn't paying attention. I know it can kill them. We carry it on ourselves whenever we go out, usually hidden. Dee carries one in her purse. I shuddered. I can't believe I killed someone. You didn't kill someone. You killed an alien, an evil thing that would have killed you without thinking twice. That was going to kill me, he added as an afterthought, absently rubbing his chest. You saved my life, kitten. Still knowing that the guy had been evil didn't change. Still, knowing that the guy had been evil didn't change how it settled in my stomach. You were like Snowbird, Damon said finally. His eyes were closed, face relaxed. It was possibly the first time I'd seen him so open. How do you figure? A small smile played across his lips. You could have left me and then ran. Like I said. But instead you came back and you helped me. You didn't have to. I couldn't leave you there. I averted my gaze. It wouldn't have been right, and I would have never been able to forgive myself. I know. Get some sleep, kitten. I was tired, exhausted, but it felt like the boogeyman was waiting outside the door. But what if the last one comes back? I paused, realizing a new fear. Dee's with Mr. Garrison. He knows I was with you when they attacked. What if he turns me in? What if the DoD... Shh, Damon murmured. His hand finding mine, his fingers brushed over the top of mine. Such a simple touch, but I felt it all the way to my toes. He won't come back, not yet, and I won't let Matthew turn you over. But, Katie, I won't let him, okay? I promise you, I won't let anything happen to you. The fluttering was there again, but now it was like a dozen butterflies had taken flight at once. I tried to stamp down the feeling. Alien business aside, Damon and I, well, we were like magnets that repelled one another. Feeling anything other than annoyance toward him was impossible, but that damn fluttering was there. I won't let anything happen to you. My chest swelled. His touch seared me. Those words filled me with a longing that was overwhelming, unexpected. And it felt good to be next to him. My body relaxed. Seconds, maybe minutes later, I drifted off to sleep, beside the one boy I couldn't stand. Just before sleep claimed me, my last thought was whether I would wake up in the morning beside this Damon, or the jerk Damon. You're still pretending to listen to. That's a whole lot of book. If I read a book live, I'd be reading alone. Yeah, well, you know what? It helps to have a set of tits. Chapter 25. And also a very calming voice that puts people to sleep. Okay, this is the last chapter of the night because it's 8:37 and, I have things to do. So after this, it means we'll only have like 5-ish chapters left of the first book. When I woke the following morning, the sun had crested the mountains surrounding the valley. I really wasn't on my side of the bed anymore. Hell, I wasn't on the bed. Half of my body was scrawled across Damon's chest. Girl. Our legs were tangled together under the comforter. Hello, yes. One of his arms was around my waist like a band of steel. My hand was on his stomach, and I could feel his heart beating under my cheek, steady and strong. I lay there, my breath in my throat. There was something intimate about being wrapped around one another in bed, like lovers. A sweet, hot fire washed over my skin, and I squeezed my eyes shut. Every inch of me was hyper-aware of him, of how my body fit against his, the way his thighs were pressed against mine, the hardness of his stomach under my hand. My hormones kicked in with the power of a dropkick to my stomach. Heated lightning zipped through my veins. For a moment, I pretended. Not that we weren't two different species, because I didn't see him that way, but that we actually liked each other. And then he shifted and rolled. I was on my back, and he was still on the move, his face burrowed into the space between my neck and shoulder, nuzzling. Sweet baby Jesus. It actually says that. Warm breath danced over my skin, sending shivers down my body. His arm was heavy against my stomach, his leg between mine, pushing up and up. Scorched air fled my lungs. Damon murmured in a language I couldn't understand. Whatever it was, it sounded beautiful and soft, magical, unearthly. I could have woken him up, but for some reason, I didn't. The thrill of him touching me was far stronger than anything else. His hand was on the edge of the borrowed shirt, his long fingers on the strip of exposed flesh between the hem and the shirt of and the band of the worn pajama bottoms, and his hand inched up under the shirt across my stomach, where it dipped slightly. Sweetie, your boy's awake. Your boy's awake. My pulse went into cardiac territory. The tip of his fingers brushed my ribs. His body moved, his knee pressed against me. I gasped. Damon stilled. No one moved. The clock on the wall ticked, and I cringed. He lifted his head. Eyes like pools of liquid grass stared at me in confusion. They quickly cleared, though, turning sharp and hard within seconds. Good morning, I squeaked. Using his powerful arms, he lifted himself up. His eyes never left mine. Damon seemed to drag in a deep breath. I wasn't sure if he let it out. Something passed between us, unspoken and heavy. His eyes narrowed. I had the funny feeling that he was sizing up the situation, and somehow I was to blame for his sleepy, albeit really, really nice, fondling. Like any of this was my fault. Without saying a word, he disappeared above me. The door opened and slammed shut behind him, without my even catching a glimpse of him. I stayed there, staring at the ceiling, heart pounding. Cheeks flushed, my body way, way too hot. Not sure of how much time passed, but the door opened again, at normal human speed. Dee popped her head in, her eyes wide. Did you too? Funny that out of everything that had happened in the last 24 hours, that was the first question she asked. No, I said, barely recognizing my own voice. I cleared my throat. I mean, we slept together, but not slept together. I rolled over, burying my face into a pillow. It smelled like him, crisp and warm, like autumn leaves. I groaned. She's like, oh, damn. Let's just remember, they're 17, okay? I was sure that if someone had told me I'd find myself sitting in a room with half a dozen aliens on a Saturday afternoon, I would have told them to get off the drugs. Yet, here I was, sitting in a recliner in the black household, legs tucked under me, but ready to run for the door if necessary. Damon was perched on the arm of a recliner, arms folded over his chest, the very chest I'd woken up on. A flush crept up my throat. We hadn't spoken, not a single word, which is okay by me. But his current position had been duly noted by everyone. Dee looked oddly smug. A deep, unforgiving scowl had settled on Ash's and Andrew's faces, but the fact I was here overshadowed any reason why Damon could be playing guard dog. Mr. Garrison had come up short. What is she doing here? She's lit up like a frickin' disco ball, Ash said accusingly. I could probably see her from Virginia. Somehow she made the whole glowing thing sound like I was covered in boils instead of light. I glared at her openly. She was with me last night when the Aram attacked. Damon responded calmly. You know that. Things got a little explosive. There's no way I could cover what happened. Mr. Garrison ran a hand through his brown hair. Damon, of all people, I expected you to know better, to be more careful. What the hell was I supposed to do exactly? Knock her out before the Aram attacked? Ash arched a brow. The look on her face said it wasn't such a bad idea. Katie has known about us since the beginning of school, Damon said, and trust me when I say I did everything possible to keep her from knowing. One of the Thompson boys sucked in a sharp breath. She's known this entire time? How could you allow this, Damon? All of our lives have been in the hands of some human. Dee rolled her eyes. Obviously, she hasn't said a word, Andrew. Chill out. Chill out? Andrew's scowl matched Ash's perfectly. And now I knew which one was Andrew. I could tell them apart. Andrew had an earring in the left ear. Adam, who was quiet, did not. She's a stupid. Be careful what you say next. Damon's voice was low, but carried. Because what you don't know and what you can't possibly understand will get a bolt of light in your face. My eyes widened, as did pretty much everyone's in the room. Ash swallowed thickly and turned her cheek, letting her blonde hair cover her face. Damon, Mr. Garrison said, stepping forward. Threatening one of your own for her? I didn't expect this from you. His shoulders stiffened. It's not like that. I took a deep breath. I'm not going to tell anyone about you guys. I know the risk to you and to me if I did. You all don't have anything to worry about. And who are you for us to trust? Mr. Garrison asked. His eyes narrowed on me. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure you're a great girl. You're smart and you seem to have your head on straight. But this is life or death for us. Our freedom, trusting a human, is not something we can afford. She saved my life last night, Damon said. Andrew laughed. Oh, come on, Damon. The error must have knocked you around. There is no way a human could have saved any of our lives. What is it with you? I snapped, unable to control myself. You act like we're incapable of doing anything. Sure, you guys are great, but whatever. That doesn't mean we're single-celled organisms. Excuse me. A choke laugh came from Adam. She did save my life. Damon stood, drawing everyone's attention. There were 3 Aram that attacked, the brethren of the one I killed. I was able to destroy one, but the 2 overpowered me. They had me down and had already begun reaching for my powers. I was a goner. Damon, Dee said, paling. You didn't tell us any of that. Mr. Garrison still looked doubtful. I don't see how she could have helped. She's a human. The Aram are powerful, immoral, and vicious. Sorry, amoral. How can one girl stand against them? I'd given her the obsidian blade I carry and told her to run. You gave her the blade when you could have used it? Ash sounded stunned. Why? Her eyes darted to me. You don't even like her. That may be the case, but I wasn't going to let her die because I don't like her. I flinched. Damn. An ache started in my chest, like a burning coal, even though I didn't care. Sweetheart, you care. You care. But you could have been hurt, Ash protested. Fear thickened her voice. You could have been killed because you gave your best defense to her. Damon sighed, sitting back down on the arm of the recliner. I have other ways to defend myself. She did not. She didn't run like I told her. Instead, she came back. And she killed the Aram, who was about to end me. Reluctant pride shone in my bio teacher's eyes. That is admirable. I rolled my eyes, starting to get a headache. It was a hell of a lot more than admirable, Dee interjected, staring at me. She didn't have to do that. That has to account for more than just being admirable. It's courageous, Adam said quietly, staring at the throw rug. It's what any of us would have done. But that doesn't change the fact that she knows about us. Andrew shot back, casting his twin a scornful look. And we're forbidden from telling any human. We didn't tell her, Dee said, stirring restlessly. It kind of happened. Oh, like it happened last time? Andrew rolled his eyes as he turned to Mr. Garrison. This is unbelievable. Mr. Garrison shook his head. After Labor Day weekend, you told me that something occurred, but you took care of it. What happened? Ash asked. Obviously, this was the first time she'd heard of anything. You're talking about the first time she was glowing? I was like a glowworm, apparently. What happened? Asked Adam, sounding curious. I walked out in front of a truck. I waited for the inevitable duh look, which I got. Ash stared at Damon, her blue eyes growing to the size of saucers. You stopped the truck? Sorry. Excuse me. He nodded. A crestfallen look appeared on her face as she looked away. Obviously, that couldn't be explained away. Excuse me. She's known since then? I figured this wasn't the time to mention that I had my suspicions before then. She didn't freak out, Dee said. She listened to us, understood why it's important, and that's it. Until last night, what we are hasn't even been an issue. But you lied to me, both of you. Mr. Garrison leaned against a wall, in the space between the TV and the overstocked bookcase. How am I to trust you now? A dull, stabbing pain flared behind my eyes. Look, I understand the risk, more than any of you in the room, Damon said, rubbing his chest where the Aram had shoved his shadowy hand. But what's done is done. We need to move forward. As in contacting the DoD? Andrew asked. I'm sure they'd know what to do with her. I'd like to see you try that, Andrew. Really, I would. Because even after last night, and I'm not yet fully charged, I could still kick your ass. Mr. Garrison cleared his throat. Damon, threats aren't necessary. Aren't they? Damon asked. A heavy silence fell in the room. I think Adam was on our side, but it was clear that Andrew and Ash weren't. When Mr. Garrison finally spoke, I had a hard time meeting his gaze. I don't think this is wise, he said. Not with what happened before. But I'm not going to turn you over. Not unless you give me a reason to. And maybe you won't. I don't know. Humans are such fickle creatures. What we are, what we can do, has to be protected at all costs. I think you understand that, he paused, clearing his throat. You're safe, but we aren't. Andrew and Ash looked less than thrilled by Mr. Garrison's decision, but they didn't push it. Other than exchanging looks with one another, they moved on to how to deal with the last Aram. He won't wait. They're not known for being patient, Mr. Garrison said, sitting down on the couch. I could contact the other Luxon, but I'm not sure that would be smart. Where we may be more confident in her, they won't be. And then there's a problem that she's a megawit light bulb right now. Ash added. It doesn't even matter if we don't say anything. The moment she goes anywhere in town, they are going to know that something big happened again. I scowled at her. Well, I don't know what I'm supposed to do about that. Any suggestions? Damon said. Because the sooner she's not carrying a trace, the better all of this is going to be. Yeah, because I bet he was looking forward to babysitting me again. Who cares? Andrew said, rolling his eyes. We have the Aram issue to worry about. He's going to see her no matter where we put her. All of us, right now, are in danger. Any of us near her are in danger. We can't wait around. We have to find the last Aram. Dee shook her head. If we can get the trace off her, then that will buy us some time to find him. Getting rid of the trace should be the first priority. I say we drive her out to the middle of nowhere and leave her ass there, Andrew murmured. Thanks, I said, rubbing my temples. You're so very helpful with all of this. He smiled at me. Hey, just offering my suggestions. Shut up, Andrew, Damon said. Andrew rolled his eyes. Once we get the trace off of her, she'll be safe, Dee insisted, and tucked her hair back. Face pinched. The Aram don't mess with humans, really. Sarah, she'd been in the wrong place at the wrong time. They launched into another discussion about what was more important, locking me up somewhere, which didn't make much sense because my light could be seen through anything, or trying to figure out a way to make the trace fade other than killing me. And I seriously think Andrew believed that that was a valid consideration. Asshole. I have an idea, Adam said. Everyone looked at him. The light around her is a byproduct of us using our power, right? And our power is concentrated energy. And we get weaker when we use our powers and use more energy. Mr. Garrison blinked, his eyes sparking with interest. I think I'm following you. I'm not, I muttered. Our powers fade the more we use them, the more energy we exert. Adam turned to Damon. It should work the same with our traces, because the trace is just residual energy we are leaving on someone. We get her to exert her own energy. It should fade what's around her. Maybe not completely, but get it down to levels that aren't going to draw every atom on Earth to us. That hardly made any sense to me, but Mr. Garrison was nodding. It should work. Damon scratched his chest, his expression doubtful. And how are we going to get her to exert energy? Andrew grinned from across the room. We could take her out to a field and chase her around in our cars. That sounds fun. Oh, fuck. Damon's laugh cut me off. I don't think that's a good idea. Funny, but not a good idea. Humans are fragile. How about I shove my fragile foot up your ass? I said, irritated. My head was pounding, and I didn't find a single one of them funny. I pushed Damon off the arm of the chair and stood. I'm getting a drink. Let me know when you guys come up with anything that won't potentially kill me in the process. Their conversation continued as I hid from the room. I wasn't thirsty. I just had to get out of there, away from them. My nerves felt shot. Entering the kitchen, I ran my hands through my hair. Blissful silence eased some of the pounding of my head. I squeezed my eyes shut until small spots danced behind my closed lids. I figured you'd be hiding in the kitchen. I yelped at the sound of Ash's quiet voice. Sorry, she said, leaning against the counter. I didn't mean to scare you. Not sure if I believed that. Okay. Up close, Ash was kind of beautiful that made me wish I could drop 20 pounds and run to the nearest makeup department. She knew it too. There was a confidence in the tilt of her chin. This must be a lot for you to handle. Learning everything and then facing what you did last night. I eyed her warily. Even though she wasn't trying to snap my head off, I wasn't going to relax. It's been different. A faint smile crossed her pouty lips. What did that TV show say? The truth is out there? X-Files, I told her. Also, a great show. I've wanted to watch Close Encounters of the Third Kind ever since I found out. Seems like the most realistic of all alien movies. Another small smile, and then she looked up, meeting my eyes. I'm not going to pretend we're ever going to be best friends, or that I trust you. I don't. You did dump spaghetti on my head. I winced at that, but she went on. And yeah, maybe I was being a bitch, but you don't understand. They are all I have. I'll do anything to keep them safe. I would never do anything to put them in danger. She moved closer, and I fought every instinct to back up. I held my ground. But you already have. How many times has Damon intervened on your behalf, run the risk of exposing what we are and what we do? You being here is putting each of us at risk. Anger tore through me like a fire. I'm not doing anything, and last night you saved Damon's life. Great, good for you. She tucked an uber straight hair behind her ear. Of course, Damon's life wouldn't have needed saving if you hadn't led the arrow straight to him. And what you think you have with Damon, you don't. Oh, for the love of babies everywhere. I don't think I have anything with Damon. You look like Damon. Oh, fuck. Sorry. You like Damon, don't you? Smirking, I grabbed a water bottle off the counter. Not really. Ash cocked her head to the side. He likes you. My heart didn't do a stupid little leap in my chest. He doesn't like me. You even said so yourself. I was wrong. She folded her slender arms as she studied me intently. He's curious about you. You're different, new, shiny. Boys, even our kind, like shiny new toys. I took a long drink of water. Well, this is one toy he has no intention of playing with. When he was awake, that is. And really, the Aram, The arrow will end up killing him. Her tone didn't change one bit. It remained flat, emotionless. Because of you, little human, he will get himself killed protecting you. Boom. Chapter 25 is done. So we're up to chapter 26. Look, we're on page 303 out of 377. We are getting there, fam. We're really getting there. I've never, ever read a book this quickly. But it's good because, like, doing this is really motivating me to read. So yeah, I'm going to keep doing it whether or not you guys like it. Pretending to listen. Mr. Garrison is a South Park. You like my rating? Oh, thank you. That's very sweet. I could be a little bit more, you know, what's the word? I guess I could like put on more of like a show and be more like in character when I'm reading their parts. But I quite like reading in my very hushed tone, you know? William Shatner, exactly. I could be a little bit more, just put on a bit more of a show, but also, why? Anyway, I am more of a show that sounds interesting. Dramatic pauses can suck. They can. Look, I'll read the last few chapters, not in hushed tones. I'll be more excited and energetic, but I don't know if I'll be around tomorrow evening, just because I am going out to dinner. So who knows? If I come home and there's still a bit of time and I'm like awake, then I will definitely get on that. But no, I'm catching up with my ex. I'm just having dinner. We're just gonna gossip, catch up on life. Tape protection, not gonna happen. That shit is not gonna happen. Anyway, hopefully, be careful. Oh, do you have a story to back that one up? Anyway, if you don't see me before then, you guys will see me in the morning if you're around. But yes, I'm gonna cut this stream here tonight. I hope the wifey doesn't see that. And we can hang out for a bit. It's 9 o'clock, so cool. Yes, of course, driving in the morning, always. Tomorrow is Thursday, so I will be going to work. Anyway, thank you for joining me this evening, and just hanging around and listening. It's very nice to just have a bit of company when I read. You go to work too damn early. You're telling me. So yes, for anyone who is joining us on any other platform, feel free to come and join us on Haps, because I will be back in a red hot second. Hope you enjoyed, and we'll get back to it hopefully tomorrow, if not on Friday. See you guys.